Network Rail is one of the country's largest infrastructure owners. Within it, an organisation called Asset Information turns data into information and insight on its assets. This organisation is currently undergoing a £330 million transformation programme to improve their approaches to the acquisition, storage and usage of asset information. This presentation by Edward Morley, Keith Faquharson and Davin Crowley-Sweet explains the vision of the organisation and maps out a number of case studies around data management.
Morley, I work within Network Rail. Network Rail is now a devolved organisation, so we have 10 root customers and a central organisation. I work in that central organisation, part of which looks after asset management, the engineering, the data, all that stuff. And we all work within the asset information part of that. You've asked us to come and talk about a number of things. So you talked, the brief that came from Julian was talking about data standards and the legacy. It was talking about how we've chosen to roll out technology into our frontline and what that's enabled us to do. And it's talking to you about how we're using decision support tools to help our frontline staff and our customers make the best decisions. How are we going to do this? We're going to share a journey with you. We're going to talk to you about a vision of Network Rail where it can use data and information to make better informed decisions. We're then going to talk about a programme that we've got in place that is about taking us from where we are now to where we need to be. And finally, we're going to use a couple of case studies to explain that in real life. And through all of that, we're going to try and pick out some of the data management issues that we find. We'll try and leave enough time for questions, but I've got quite a lot of slides to plough my way through. Very complicated, big picture of the railway as an industry. So we're going to discuss it, we're going to walk around the top half of that which describes the railway, and as we do so, we'll look at the vision. What could the world be like when? And then we're going to describe what's going on in the underneath, and the underneath is the asset information part. It's the part where we're describing how we turn data into information and then insight, and both how we do it sustainably as an organisation and the programme that we've got in place. So we've got three objectives. We need to do what we do as a service delivering organisation. So we need to provide it and align what we do to our business processes. We need to do what we do in a sustainable way. There's no point in being here for a short period. We want to provide a managed service to our customers for a long time. And finally, what do we own? We own 5 different data types, and we'll talk about those, and we'll talk about how we're trying to enhance them to improve our asset information to people. So let's go around this rather large diagram, first looking at how we align our business to our business processes. So our customers in the railway industry, train operators, freight operators and the travelling public, they have a variety of mechanisms by which they manage what we do, but fundamentally we maintain and renew and operate the railway infrastructure to provide a timetable. We provide a timetable against which train operators can work. And we now do that in this arrangement at a very, very high level. We plan the railway, we change it, and then we manage it and operate it. And we do that currently within a world which is devolved. As I said, in November 2011 we devolved, we pushed accountability and money to 10 customers, and in the centre you've got your HR and your legal and blah, 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 but you've also got your engineering expertise. And one of the types of asset that we manage is information and data. So how do we do that within this world? So if we go around the diagram, the planning of the railway is a 30-year programme. What are we going to do? How big is it? It's a balance of capability and capacity. How big can we make it? How many people can we put on it? Versus are we able to? And what degrades 2 bits of metal in a straight line? It's things like how much trains we run over and the sort of impacts on things like weather. So it's a balancing act we always have to play. And that balancing act happens with the government. We need money to do stuff. We need money to build it, to maintain it, to renew it. But we have to have a credible story for our regulator and our government that justifies the 30-something billion pounds that you'll have read in the papers that we asked for a couple of weeks ago. 5 years, £5 billion a year we spend on the railway. But what are we doing with it once we've got it? We're building new railway, huge, hunking great infrastructure projects. And let's look at that and look at some of the things that we could do better. So we manage data, but we probably don't manage it as well as we could. So we spend off the order of £30 million a year surveying bits of land. Most of that ends up in big boxes that say deep storage, in a salt mine in Cheshire. Not very useful when you want to get it back again, and certainly not in a way that allows you to tag it to your network. So we don't digitalise it. So tick in the box. Wouldn't it be wonderful when we can digitalise our data, we can attach it to our network, and we can draw back information from it? When we look at the world of management of the railway, lots and lots of stuff has to get out to our front line. This guy is called the COS, the person in charge of safe site working. And in order to go out on track, you've got to wear your magic orange and your hard hat. But we also give you a big pack fairly frequently that says, you're about to do this. Here's all the information and stuff you need to know. It's quite important to know the maps and the schematics and the hospitals and all this kind of stuff. But it lands on your door every couple of weeks and it looks like a BT telephone directory. Have another read. Wouldn't it be great when we could give that to you in a dynamic way, when it was visual, when it was right and the data collated itself? So it's, again, the use of pulling together pieces of data and all the stuff behind it that we've got to do. When we make decisions, investment decisions, this is the billions of pounds we want to know, but every part of this cycle requires parts of data and information before you join them together to make a whole life investment decision. Can we do that as well as we could? Probably not. Does better information and better data enable us to do that? Does it enable us to do it in real time? That's the vision. When we look at the world of the operations, we might not think that there's as much data and information, but really there is. We move into a world where you want your data and you want your information in real time. You want to be able to know, in effect, the sat-nav on your car says there's a traffic problem, we're going to go this way and bypass it. It's a little bit more difficult in the trains because they keep you in the straight and narrow, but the planning, the capacity, the life status updates of what's going on. Let's give an example of that. We've got the guy called the Mobile Operations Manager in the corner there. He's the man in a van to go out and get the railway operating again. And as he goes, he's on the phone talking to people, saying, what's going on? Wouldn't it be great if he didn't have to use his hands-free? Sorry, hands-free. And as he went, he could be provided with data and information. When he gets there, he has what he needs in front of him. He has the right layers of data to enable him to make the right decisions live. And then as he communicates it back, he does it to a whole sweep of people. He's not just talking to the response unit, who then talk to the control centre, who then might talk to the train operator, who eventually talk to me on a train. And I can tell you, it's got to the controller quicker than it's got to me because I can read the report. Wouldn't it be great if we all sat on a train and knew what was going on? It might not be good news, but it's better to know. Isn't it nice when you can have a red pen and ask a really simple question? My simple question today is, can I run a few more trains? Well, 10,000 hours of modelling later in Excel, I might be able to help you understand that question because I've got to understand the condition of the railway, the gauging of the railway, the line speed, the bidirectionality of it, the resourcing that I need to put into it to have my people interact with it to maintain it. It's not an easy question, but it's made an awful lot harder by our ability to have to rebuild it every time. So wouldn't it be wonderful if when I have a schematic, a fully nodal model of the railway that allows me to pick up a lump and model against it and then put it back and do something else with it. So we've dashed around this because my understanding is we want to have a conversation at the end. So we've dashed around a diagram of the railway, how the railway operates. We've now got to say, how do we do it as an organisation? How do we do it so that we're still here doing it sustainably and reliably in the future? So our organisation may be different to what the customer wants. And we've done that by Patrick, my boss, joined 18 months ago and took a look at the industry and why break something, why change something that works. And he looked at the National Criminal Intelligence Service. And they've got a model for turning data into information, where you collect it, you evaluate and collate it. Doesn't really matter which order you do that, but you make a choice about how good it is and you put it in its box from which you can analyse it and communicate it. And we as an organisation are constructed in that way. It's a donut diagram that describes our organisation. We won't go into what every team does, but the colour coding reflects the fact that it aligns to the process at the top. But our responsibility, what we're here to do, is to be custodians of a railway infrastructure model, that nodal model of how the railway works, the tube map. And underneath it, it doesn't matter what data marts and what systems we've got. You, the customer, just want your jigsaw piece within this model. And you want it because from it, you can do a whole load of modelling. You can take the model and you can overlay it with the asset. I know where the track is. You can overlay it with the topology and the topography. And from it, you can ask questions of that data set. From it, you can make better decisions. But to do that, it's all got to be joined together. And more than just for us, it's got to be joined beyond Network Rail. Oh, sorry. The last bit of the jigsaw puzzle shows that other people want the same level of consistent information that we can provide for them. Not just the regulator, not just the government and the train operators and the freight operators, but actually the ability to be interoperable between Europe. Is Channel Tunnel, how can we run trains either direction? The ability not to get the wrong size box trying to go through the wrong size Victorian tunnel is quite helpful. So the thing called the RIM, the description, the way that we specified our railway, verified it, assured the data, all of these data management things are critical to being able to run a railway on behalf of GB, sure, but that can work and interact with other people. But that's how we do it. We as an organisation may say, yeah, fantastic, the best way is to follow a process, but as a customer that means very little. So from a customer point of view, where I'm delivering a service, I need to provide myself as a service. So I sit in this donut as the head of business engagement. So I interact between them and my customers. And I interact and talk about the services that I can offer. So I've got a service portfolio, things that make sense, things that in your language you want and need. So last year's service portfolio contained 9 services. The things that help you run your railway, whether that's providing you with the right information to know that as you go on track you're going to be safe, to help you with the underground services so that you know that when you dig, you're unfortunately not going to hit something that might be gas or water or a mistake. The ability to help our business control the documents that are safety critical, that we must know have been read. The ability through the middle, the big modelling that we do. The ownership, the ability to report and provide insight based upon the information that we've received. The ability to improve our data set. There's no point in saying that our data is perfect. I don't quite know where I am. I normally do this in Milton Keynes and I know the railway's over there. But 20 years, the railway's over there. It's got 4 tracks, they're big and they're metal and we choose not to walk on them. But nowadays we can run amazing yellow trains at fast speeds that can identify a fault on the track to the nearest 50 centimetres. So there's no point in referencing yourself to the nearest mile marker or the 26-yard chain or it's near the gate with the blue thing on it. You know, you've got to know where you are and you've got to get there as quickly as possible. We run a railway to try and be safe and efficient. So our safety is about getting everyone safe home first time. Getting you to the right place is part of that story. We own the infrastructure model. We're custodians of that for which other people are going to model. So we've got all the data management against that verifies it, that specifies it, that makes sure that as new data comes into that model, it's always right. And how can we get it always right in real time? That's got to be the vision. And then how do we collect this vast quantity of data, terabytes of it? You know, we've got amazing yellow trains that 100 mile an hour can watch the overhead line and turn out 25 terabytes of data in an evening, and then you've got to push it somewhere. We've got bits of kit on the track that can monitor effectively the flat that you sometimes get on a train wheel. You know, if you've braked and you've got a flat that goes clunk, clunk, it does nasty things to our railway track. Those sorts of monitoring things and how we then inform our customers, how do you turn that from being a vidi printer into something like a map? How do you turn that into layers of data that can inform, that can provide insight and decisions before you go out on track, so that the thing you do when you get there is done as quickly as possible to get you home safely. It helps to make it efficient. So that's our story. That's how we believe that we can understand the vision of the railway and how we as an organisation can create a sustainable organisation ourselves and how we can provide a service to our customers that they understand. And finally, before I hand over to Keith, we're about exploiting 5 types of data. We're about recognising that we've got fixed assets. That's the stuff, the signals, the track, etc., etc. We've got fleet asset, the stuff that's going to run on our fixed asset. We need to know about that. And what we want to do is join that into a topographical vision, something that somebody understands visually. And the piece in the middle is the challenge. The piece in the middle is the schematic nodal tube map. And if I can understand the tube map and I can know what goes on between 2 point nodes or what the linear asset is, I can start to do my modelling. And finally, we do manage 17 million pieces of unstructured data, and it would be awfully nice if we could reduce that by putting it usefully against our infrastructure, knowing where it is and what it is and being able to retrieve it when we want. So Patrick took this vision and he turned around and said, we're an organisation of £30 million operating cost every year. We might snaffle £3 million, 10% into an R&D fund every year, but the speed of technological change and the speed with which the government requires us to make change of significance in our cost base requires us to do something much, much more radical. If you look at any of the metrics over the last 10 years, safety, performance, reliability, they've all gone up, but they're all reaching their asymptotic norm. So you've got to do something to make that change. And that change has been an investment in technology to get the insight and decisions closer to the person that really wants them and needs them. So Patrick made his bid to the two government bodies, to Transport Scotland and the DfT. And from that, we've got a strategic roadmap. It's a programme we called ORBIS. I shall hand over to Keith, who will help explain some of it to us.
Thank you, Edward. So Edward's taken you through kind of really the vision in terms of what we've put in place and how we've gained a lot of support from stakeholders in terms of how we want to transform asset information and how Network Rail uses asset information. And transformation is the key word there. This is a transformation program journey that we're on, which is technology driven, but it requires a big business and process change if we're really going to make the step change we want to. So, just a little bit about the enhancement program, which is ORBIS. It's approximately 7 years long. It's made up of 40 or so projects. We're 15 or so months into this. The key thing we've tried to do is to translate all these projects into a set of objectives that we want to deliver out of this programme, being really clear in terms of how it supports the 5 core asset information types that Edward described, being absolutely clear in terms of which part of the business is going to gain some real value from this, and then establishing a set of outcomes that the business have described to us is the benefit that they get from introducing this program of work. And that's the key thing. It's a customer perspective of what we're trying to deliver. And so it's their words about how they're going to use what we provide to them. And so this program runs over into 2019. And I just want to talk you through some of the key deliverables, key outcomes that we've started to deliver on this journey, which is 12 months in and a number of years to go. So one of the first discussions we had with the business, and we did something around needs and frustrations, understanding where some of the challenges were, and the realisation, particularly at the front line, people who are working day in, day out, night in, night out, right on our assets, our fixed assets, the information they need is absolutely vital from a safety perspective, from the ability to collect the right information is really important. So knowing where they are. So we've got 22,000 linear assets, miles of linear assets. We've got our own unique language in terms of how we measure distance, called ELR miles chains, and how that information kind of filters into various reports and information. Just finding an asset, inspecting an asset, important about verifying and being clear about the information that's out on site is exactly what we hold in our information systems centrally. Reporting a problem, reporting a fault, and looking something up, referring to something to make sure that what they're going to do is safe and it's the right thing to do. And just having all of that information to hand is a really powerful thing for frontline teams. And I think how we've described this is that PPE, personal protection equipment, is absolutely one of the things those individuals pick up at the start of any shift. And we see tools like tablets, phones as fundamental for them to do work going forward. And not just the devices themselves, but what they do and what they will do with them. So one of the things we embarked on really from day naught, in fact it was before day naught, in terms of when the program established, was to put a program to roll out iPhones to those frontline teams. And the key thing is this isn't a management or a senior management tool. This is about getting these devices to the people that can get the most value out of it. And that's what we tried to do from day one and continue to do that. And so over the last 12 or so months, we've rolled out around 8,000 of those devices out to frontline teams. And that's a part of the journey, and we expect to do more of that into the future. And so there's certain key objectives we're trying to be able to deliver out of this. And just simply about logging rail defects, not just logging that there is one, but using GPS, some of that core functionality you get with those devices to accurately identify where they are, so when somebody needs to return to that point, they've got confidence about where that particular defect is. And we introduced a simple app which we call GPS Finder, and it does exactly that. You put in a GPS code, it gives you a compass and directs you to where you want to go, and it literally just counts down to the point that you need to get to. And just some of those simple tools we wanted to introduce to really get that support and kind of buy-in from those frontline teams. So this wasn't simply just rolling out some technology for technology's sake. It was to make sure that people came up with those ideas, and we wanted to respond to those ideas. And the outcome, can locate rail defects more accurately, and that's exactly what the business is trying to do on a day-to-day basis. And one of the key things we tried to do was, and continue to do, is to make sure we gather ideas back from those frontline teams in terms of how we can improve, what applications we can develop, what can we improve, and it's those key aspects that we've tried to introduce through a number of communication channels into the maintenance organisation, which is our key customer for this. So just want to talk you through some other particular outcomes we're going to be delivering and have delivered over the past few months. So one big one was buried services, the underground cables, pipework that exists under the railways and around the assets. It used to take 7 to 9 days to actually be able to respond with an accurate set of results, and now we're moving to a 24-hour and eventually a point where we can be more self-service in terms of people can get access to this information, providing a far safer response and information when they actually need it. One of the key things we're trying to do is to be able to visualise our network far more. So I kind of call it kind of Google Rail for the network. And this has some key advantages, particularly when it comes to planning work. And the normal mode of work is to go out to site to visualise what you're trying to do. There's obviously some safety implications to do that, and the opportunity to actually do that kind of planning safely away from the track is one of the key things we're trying to introduce around here. And so what we've done and embarked on is using helicopters, is to take some high definition imagery of our network and coupling that with video information from our trains, is to try to give a perspective, 2 different perspectives of how you can visualise that network and start to plan our business, the activities that we do out on the network day to day. Just some other outcomes we're trying to deliver here. One of the things that Davin will touch on later on is about verification of asset information. A key thing which we want to try and do is to make absolutely sure what we have out on site is absolutely what we've got in the systems where we make key kind of investment decisions off the back of it. And an exercise we want to try and do is not just to know what those assets are, but where they are, and using GPS proximity both to determine to capture where that information, where that asset is, and to be able to get back out to that asset is a key part of what we're trying to do going forward. And just to visualise this, just to use these devices, even just to capture photos and get records and capture the data you want to capture out in the field, removing the need for paper is one of the aspirations we're going to be delivering through this programme. And we start to tap into how we respond to incidents quicker, how we can provide information out to those frontline teams at the point of an incident, and if there's been any particular safety-related issues, the ability, or close calls as we call it, capturing that information when it happens and knowing where that information is, using the likes of GPS to do that. Just to demonstrate how we're starting to use this on a day-to-day basis. So we've broken up this transformation program into 3 key stages, and through the first stage we've called it around kind of what and where. It's about getting the basics right, the core information we want up to the level of quality completeness that we want to. Then we're moving forward and tranche 2 is looking at connecting this up. And this is starting to move into an area really around asset management and about delivering the optimal cost, the whole life cost of assets, and trying to bring that information together to drive out that optimal investment in our assets. And moving forward, see, these again are there's key outcomes that they're aiming to deliver through tranche 2, and moving forward into tranche 3. This is about making it real time. This is about how we can start to bring in information about train management and the operations into play, and start to see how we can generate increased revenue off the back of our assets. And so how do we run that railway to its optimum? And that's a key driver in which we're trying to deliver through this particular program. So I think at this point I'm handing over to Davin to take through a couple of case studies.
Thank you, Keith. Right. So now we're to the point where we're down and dirty. So I've got the tough task of making data exciting, because you seem like a lively audience here. What I hope to do today is describe how big Network Rail is in terms of an infrastructure asset management company. It's massive. I then want to describe a couple of case studies about how we're adopting our data management to support our emerging and growing asset management policies to better our position, so we can help balance those decisions about reliability, capacity, performance and cost. I then want to show you a bit of down in the dirty, and I'm afraid Edward has taken some of my doodles. I don't write anything down, I only draw pictures. And there's subjected to these in this presentation. And then we'll go into the case study, some real live examples of how we're using our data to evolve our asset management policies. And then I think we're going to settle back for some question time. So just to talk about Network Rail in terms of its size, we are one of the biggest landowners in the UK. We have around 20,000 miles of track, 40,000 bridges and structures. We've got an organisation that's about 35,000 people that is based across the. As Keith mentioned earlier, there are 8,000 handheld devices that have been deployed. Our frontline workforce in maintenance is 15,000 people. When you start factoring in different cultures we've got to communicate clearly to just across the country, how you speak to the people in the south is very different to how you speak to the other people elsewhere in the country. So these are just some of the logistical challenges that we've got to factor in when we think about data. But also, it's a very dangerous, or can be a very dangerous environment if we get things wrong. I'm sure all of you know, in September or February 2007, Lamrig incident happened, and we had the tragic loss of a life due to those events, and 22 people. Network Rail quickly took responsibility for the incident of that day, and has been working very closely with our industry partners to get to the bottom of the leading causes towards that incident and how to make it better. And from a personal note, I just want to add at this point, if anyone in this room or anyone you know has been affected by this tragedy, you have my personal sympathies for your losses or have been affected. And that's a real reminder of the stark reality of the rail industry and what happens when we do get things wrong. One of the recommendations that came out there, I don't know if you can read that, so I'm going to do a debate of Network Rail should implement processes to gather and analyse data both in the short term and thereafter that will enable it to identify and monitor accident precursor events into its switches and crossings. So we're working towards that, and I can show you some examples of what we're doing. But switches and crossings is just one of our asset types of many hundreds of different types of assets that make up our infrastructure. So we're not about stopping there. We've got to keep going. We've got to apply this to all our assets. So how do we do that? When I spoke about the size of our assets, one of our asset registers has 1.6 million assets in it that make up the railway system of just some of our disciplines. This, I'm afraid, is one of my sketches. It was a very bad day when someone gave a left-handed person an iPad. So I thought what I'd do is describe about how we break up that monster that is network rail data management into something that is a bit easy to chew. So, right now we have control periods. This is a 5-yearly investment that we get to manage the railway that Edward talked about earlier. We have asset policies about how we look after those assets. And this diagram is trying to show how we've traditionally looked after those asset policies and what data we've needed to support it and where we think we're heading in the future. So in our first control period 3, we had a very time-based policy. And you know what? We had that policy based on our functional understanding of our infrastructure. Track, very permanent way, bridges and signals. Signals, power and comms, including the dark art of electrification and those wires in the air that no one really understands. What information did we need to support that policy was about what the assets are and where they are. We then got a bit smarter and we started delving into, okay, so do we really want to apply blanket policies to assets about what are they are, where they are? No, we need to think about what condition those assets are in. So we started adding condition into our understanding of the assets. We're then evolving further to factor in risk, so we've got 2 assets that are the same type and in the same place and in the same condition. But what's the actual risk? How do we prioritise what assets we look after, in what order and in what way, with what people? So we've started adding what we refer to as utilisation data to that mix. Where we're slowly getting towards, and via the logical model of our understanding, when people think of the logical understanding of Network Rail, and apologies for going geeky here, they think track, they think link node. Well, actually, we've got a track system. We've got a drainage linear network system. We've got a telecom system, we've got a power system, we've got an electrification system, both in the air and on the floor. We are full of layered logical networks that need to be understood in a logical system for us to slice through that to make decisions about moving from a policy that says, how do we look after track, to a policy that says, how do I look after Birmingham New Street Station? You know, and that's the future, and that's where we want to be made, that integrated view of our infrastructure. So these words that talk about that integrated view, about capability and performance of infrastructure, are these just management isms that I've just described to make us look cool or something like that? Well, no, they're not. And I hope this next doodle that I'm going to subject it to explains that a bit. Julian seen this one. So what I've tried to articulate here is, why do we break the data into that? We're about understanding and aligning into our business processes. We're about capturing the right data to support the right decisions and the right policy. What I've tried to do with this diagram is understand, or help people understand, what our asset is. So we can see our assets in 2 ways. We can see it as a single asset, a point machine, for example. And we can view it as a system, as a network. What defines the condition of our asset is what it is and where it is. How that condition deteriorates over time is how it's utilised at a network level. A station, a train that goes below. The condition of our asset provokes a workback response. The present condition of our asset will tell us its capability, and our workback will tell us its future capability. How we then start viewing utilisation and capabilities, how we can then start understanding performance and then start working towards capacity questions. So what we try to do here is, rather than just separate the data into the asset policies we need, is we've worked with our industry to understand, well, why do you need this data, and how do we meet your business processes that capture the essence of how a railway operates. So that's a bit about what we do and how we eat the elephant. So going back to the recommendations from the Raven Guy and Land, as anyone who manages data knows, it's all about the specification. It's all about knowing what data you need. And that's not just the data set. So I've got an army of people that look in the business at all the business processes that require data and say, what data do you need to manage that process? And what quality do you need that data? Because the same data needs to be different quality to support different business processes. An example of that being some group of people may need to understand where a bridge is. A guy doing a visual inspection, maybe 50 metres is good enough. A guy doing a laser inspection of the exact gauge, he needs to know within 50 centimetres. So what does data quality mean? It depends on the business process that it supports. So then how do we collect that data to meet that specification? Edward mentioned some trains and some fantastic fleet we've got. Perhaps we can use satellite imagery and aerial drones. iPads and the apps that come out on them have been absolutely phenomenal in helping us reduce that process from technician to section manager to person in the office plugging in the spreadsheet. We've gone direct from source to system. Okay, so that's really helped giving us an understanding of our assets and helping us grow and mature and change that asset policy over time. That's led to decision support tools, and some of them I'll try and show you. It's also led to some different benefits that with a specification in place, a complete understanding of what data we need and what data that means to our knowledge standards. We've been able to answer some really questions. We've looked at some of our switches and crossings, for example, and through putting that data, layering it, tying it all together, we've actually been able to say, well, you know these switches here and here, you don't actually use them, they never actually operate. Do we need to remove them? Are they a risk to the infrastructure? So this is helping guide and change how we've physically managed our asset from condition and risk. So this is a bit about the roadmap. If I've learned anything on the journey, is if you're implementing a large change program around data, it's about using your ears and mouth in that same proportion and listening to the business and letting them change you as much as you are changing them, if not even more. These vignettes are examples of those business value propositions. What does this mean to me? That's what the business wants to know. How does this affect my day job? We've listened to them, and this example of this is in support tool. We brought that forward. We've listened to our people about how they need, what they need, and when they need it. This is another example of some of that. So data is cold and it's boring, quite frankly. We aren't programmed or designed to look at Excel spreadsheets. It's a rare breed that can. So how do we make that real? How do I make data and the possibilities that are endless that it can do for your business real to you? Let's turn it geospatial. Let's use that logical map. Let's use that data. Let's put it in a language and a way that understands. So this is an example of an area that we've plotted the track that's relative to the area. We've then plotted the curvature. So we've taken two separate data sets and we've brought them together by having a common understanding of where the infrastructure is, the things that describe where the data is. We've then plotted the conditions. We've overlaid the track and the curvature. So we've said, there's your track, this is where it curves. And we're moving towards a deeper understanding of how we should prioritise and evolve. Okay, so what we've done then is we've added condition information to that. So you've got track that's curving, where are you getting those sequences? And you know what? Where is the fatigue or age starting to become a problem for that track? What we end up doing is overlaying several data sets with a common specification that says what the data should look like to make the job of someone pulling that together, layering all that information on top of each other to support business processes really simple. What this has led to is a refinement of that policy that says, you know what, in this area that's very real to you, you've got a policy that says you should cover and renew all your track. You've got this big expensive new type of rail that we need to plug in. How are you going to balance the decisions about where you put that track? From overlaying that data that's driven by the specifications and the thing that we've worked on, we've been able to identify, you know what, this place right here is track on a curve with the condition information, and other stuff that tells you this is where you need to focus first. So that's really about where we're going with it. Really where we finish this presentation. And I suppose just to build on some of the things that my director gave me some direction for a change, really helpful. He said to me, I said to him, you know, how should I approach this event? And he said, have a clear understanding in your head of what you want those guys walking out of the room with today. And we all had to think about that. and we thought some things. Some of the things we thought about is, yeah, technology is great. And you probably saw the budget on the web, which says hundreds of millions, and you've seen us carrying around with iPhones and iPads. But you know what? That's not where the budget in our project is. It's all about business change. It's all about people. It's all about understanding the business processes that underpin the decisions in your industry and using technologies and processes to support them. It's all about listening to the people you're changing just as much as you're going to change them. And it's about the final one, which is my bugbear that I threw in. It's recognising that data is an asset in its own right. It's not merely a reflection of your physical infrastructure. It works with the whole asset management principles in every way. We have choice over the data we buy. We make management decisions of that data to reduce its whole life cost to the optimum point. We then operate that data during its life cycle to achieve the maximum value from that data. When maintaining it becomes unsustainable, we think about renewing that data. You know what? And when the data doesn't meet the business purpose anymore, we dispose of that data. And those are frighteningly similar to exactly the same way that you manage your infrastructure. So that's the key messages from me today. I hope this has been helpful for you. And I think we want to go to questions, is that right?